from the heart of Dubai, where tomorrow is being built today, to the world. Welcome to the CTO Show with Mehmet. Here, we redefine technology and reimagine possibilities. With Mehmet, delve into the riveting realms of AI, cybersecurity, and digital technology. Experience the thrilling highs and lows of startups. Immerse yourself in the spirit of entrepreneurship and witness the future of business innovation being written in real time. Now, without further ado, let's tune in and explore the future.
Hello and welcome back to a new episode of the CTO Show with Mehmet. Today I'm very pleased, joining me from the US, someone who have a special expertise which I was looking for a long time. I want to welcome with me today Pete Steege. He is, I would call you an advisor, Pete. I would call you an author, like you have multiple hats you wear. But you know what? I can tell the audience that your background is really fascinating and your work really, resonates with, as we were discussing before we hit the record button, with what I'm trying to do in this podcast, which is about helping founders becoming better CEOs. But I don't like to steal the lights from you, Pete. The way I love to do it always is I keep it to my guests to introduce themselves. Tell us a little more about you, your journey, what you're currently up to, and then, of course, we can start the discussion from there. So the floor is yours.
Thanks, Mehmet. It's great to be here. And you hit it on the head. I'm really focused on CEOs, and in specific, I call them accidental CEOs. Those are the technical experts, the domain experts that are so passionate about what they do, and they're so good at it that they wake up one day and realize they've actually gotten into a position of running a company because of their smarts, really. And there's a lot of things to figure out for people like that to be a successful CEO. So I focus on helping those accidental CEOs grow their business. My background is I'm actually an accidental CEO myself. I'm an electrical engineer by training and had a long career in technology industries and companies, helping them grow at different levels and different times. So I'm just love learning about these accidental CEOs and figuring out how to help them grow their business.
Fantastic. And, I'm having this feeling that we're going to have a great discussion because, as I was telling you, I think this is something commonly happening with people, especially in this time where it's not like as hard as it was before to start a company and becoming a CEO. But of course, now we're going to dig more into this. But one thing which attracted my attention about what you have under your name here, B2B Clarity. So what I understand, Pete, is like you work with B2B CEOs, right? And you help them to have the clarity. Is that right?
That's right. That's exactly right. And that prompted me to write the book Radical Clarity too, which is just that. I found that and we'll probably get into this, Mehmet, but the biggest change that these CEOs need to make to be successful is not to do more things, but to actually do less things.
Cool. Maybe a traditional question, a deja vu probably for you. You might have been asked multiple times. What was the main inspiration behind the book? And as now I became also an author, like I know what pushed me to do that. So what was like the main motivation for you to write the book, Pete?
Well, I've been in my business for 5 years now, and in those 5 years, I've met a lot of CEOs and worked with a lot of CEOs, and I started to see some real common trends in the breakthroughs that would help them really move into the next level of growth for themselves and for their business. And what that had in common, almost always, it started with what I call their true story. And that's that really simple, intuitive, sometimes it's 2 or 3 words that describes why they're here, right? Why their business exists and the value they provide, who they provide it to. That true story, we don't create it, we
Hmm.
uncover it, right? So I learned that the issue that was there was this this complexity in our lives is actually um, the biggest problem that businesses have, that CEOs have, that are technical experts, is they're trying to figure it all out. Where what's really important is this simple meaning, this that can be shared with their team, that can be shared with their prospects, and that meaning, especially for a technical person, meaning isn't the first thing they go to when it comes to what they're thinking about with a successful business. But I found that meaning and that clarity around it is the power that that sits behind success in almost every aspect. We can talk about different functions of their business, product,
Sure.
marketing, sales, operations. This core shared meaning is the juice that pushes it all forward.
Is it like what I also mentor some to be entrepreneurs, and the first question, and it's not me, I invented this, like it's something I learned from multiple known figures, of course. Is this the why we ask the founders why they started, why they want to be founders in the first place? Is this the clarity we are talking about? Is it the end goal, the vision, like how we define it, Pete?
That's a really important part of it, the why, for sure. And if your listeners have not read Simon Sinek's book, f
Start
what
with
is it?
why.
Yes, that's really a valuable insight, right? But it's more than that. It's a combination of the why. I think of it almost like magnets attracting. The one pole of the magnet is the why, the purpose that I have. Like I can do I want to do this thing, right?
Mhm.
I can do this thing, and I see the value of it for my clients, for the industry, for my family, whatever, right? But then the other pole of the magnet is the receiving end, the who I'm doing it for.
Mhm.
And that who is so important because without clarity about exactly who this thing I do is for, it can get watered down or canceled out. So often when I work with CEOs, they have a mission. They know this thing that they're so good at. And often they want to talk about what it is and what it does, but they're vague about who exactly it helps. And by working on being really, really clear about that, I call it a bullseye market, not a target market. It's so specific. That opens up the power of that purpose and that meaning about that why that you do. So back to your question, why? Absolutely, but who is just as important.
And if I'm not mistaken, so I'm trying to uncover things. Of course, people can go to the book, but I'm trying to get my best in the time that we have today, Pete. Is this the empathy that they have to also have towards their customers so they can have better results? It's not like about the cool idea,
Yes.
which they are passionate about, maybe, but does it have to do with the empathy here?
Yes, absolutely. I love that word. I talk about generosity,
Mm-hmm.
that a spirit of generosity for you as a founder is part of this mindset that you need, that helps that you bring this thing you have inside of you outside of you to your team and to the market. So if you're not if you're not authentically caring about this person or this group that you're doing it for, then that lack of empathy gets your team is modeling you, right? Your
Mm-hmm.
team is looking to you to see how consciously and unconsciously to see how this company works and how we do things and how we decide things. And one of those things is this empathy, this caring, this generosity. And when you as the founder are all about the customer and not in a mercenary way, right? You're not just doing it because that gets me to the money or that gets me sales, but you really do care about that target, that person or company,
Mhm.
it translates that way. What I tell CEOs when we have this conversation is, yeah, you want to make money. You want this to be profitable. It needs to be profitable for it to go on, right? So that's totally understandable. But at the end of the day, when you created this company, it's the value that creates the profit, right? It's the fact that you're actually helping them. That happens first. The help, the assistance, the giving is the source of the success, the financial success.
Yeah, you exactly, took the words that I held on because, I knew the flow would bring us here. There's a famous video, an old one, of course, of Steve Jobs, and he was mentioning people comes to me and asking me like how we can start a company, and he asked them why you want to start the company, and then he says like they tell him like it's to make money, and he said no, better you go and do something else. It's not like this journey. And even like now, people when I ask them why you want to start this, they tell, yeah, we want to become rich, like. Yeah, we're passionate about it, but also, and I say, getting the money, which is nothing wrong with that, is the result of what you do, but it's not the purpose of what you do. So this is makes a lot of sense with what you're saying, Pete. Now you call it radical clarity, right? So, and this is the book name also. Um, why it is radical? This is first, and how I can have clarity, especially if I am maybe a solo founder coming from technology background, and now I have to learn bunch of things, which you mentioned like just minutes ago: sales, marketing, public relations. You just name it. Like there's a bunch of things. So how I can still have this clarity, which is you call it radical clarity.
What makes it radical is that it's it's the opposite of what our society and what our business conventions are
Mm-hmm.
asking for from us. Look at our look, first. Let's just look at all of our lives, whether you're a CEO or not. There is so much noise. There's so much uh, things asking for our attention, and it's so easy for us to let them in, right? Social media is the obvious example, but it's true in all of our lives that we're so overscheduled, and there's always more things that we could be doing or watching or seeing than we have time for, right?
True.
Now you're a CEO, and take that, and now it's your job to be informed and on top of all these things. You have to do all these things, right? The convention says, well, turn up the volume, get going. You gotta pick all this up. What's lost in that is that I believe, back to meaning, I believe that the true power and opportunity for you with your business, for you with your team and leading your team is this meaning, which is the real stuff, right? And the more things you have on your team's priority list, the more markets you're targeting, the more products and product models and product features you have, the more words on your website, the more you're dividing their minds, your teams and your customers, their minds, time. You're crowding out what's really important, the truth of it. So that's where I'm just a big believer that less is more in almost every aspect of being a CEO, and that you need to choose what is most important, and you and your team do that first. And there's always a way to offload or delegate or outsource the rest. So it starts with deciding what's important. Back to the true story, right? That's where we
Yeah.
start. Get clear on that. That's the radical part, is set aside all the stuff that everybody says you have to do, and first find your core. And then here's the other radical part of this. As a CEO, your number one job after that is every day you are the steward of that true story. You are the guardian of it. You are the one that needs to bring it up every day and in all the meetings about why we're here and what's important and what does that look like going forward, right? Test everything against that. And that the other thing I'll say, Mehmet,
Mhm.
is one of the biggest symptoms of doing this well is you end up saying no a lot, right? You say no to a lot of things for you personally, for your business priorities, even for your clients, right? You don't put everything out there in front of them. You give them what they really need from you.
Um, because you work with a lot of CEOs, Pete, especially for the ones who comes from technology background. I'm an engineer by education, like you, and I know for a fact that uh, maybe when I was younger, I was used to think the opposite way. So, not as a CEO, like in general, when I shifted to the business side, and as a CEO, whatever your background is, you are a business guy now. You're not only the technical guy. So the thing that I was noticing on myself, and I start to notice that it's not only me. A lot of I can say the majority. I don't like to generalize things. Coming from technology background, being an engineer, you want to put as much details as possible. You want to put as much features as possible. You want to exactly the opposite of what you are. But now, how we can train ourselves to slow down? Like it looks at some stage. I thought it's an instinct in me. It's like a reflex that whenever someone asks me for something, yeah, I have to jump and I have to do it. How do we start controlling ourselves as a CEOs to make sure that okay, we should take it, say no? Is there anything you advise them to follow to have this built as a habit? I would say.
It's a great question, Mehmet. And I believe the answer is don't try to do it in a vacuum. Don't try to say, "Oh, I'm going to stop doing these things just because I should." It goes back to why we always start with finding their true story first.
Hmm.
Because if you have that in hand, if you know, if you can steep yourself in your purpose, in your meaning, it's not just your job to help your team stay on track. It helps you stay on track to say, okay, rather than say, oh, I'm going to stop doing that or I'm going to stop doing that. First say, okay, what am I going to do? What do I need to do for this primary mission we are on? What's the top 2 or 3 things for your business, for example? What are the top 2 or 3 things we need to do to help us move forward right now? If you do that first, then think about what else you could do. It's easier because you don't have time for the other things, right? Because you're focused on the important things. So that's what I advise is don't try to empty out everything without something in its place. Start with the thing that belongs first, which is that core purpose for your business. I also have some frameworks that are helpful for this with my
Hmm.
clients that help them go audit their business really to find out what's in the way of them taking their special purpose and getting it into the hearts and minds of their target market. So we look at those two ends of the two poles of the magnet, and we understand what's their process of discovering us, getting to know us, deciding to choose us, working with us, etc. That lifetime of with us. How does that happen? Well, because we have an idea about that. We're experts at what we do. So we think through how is that going to happen step by step by step in our market specifics. And then we go back through, we document all that. Then we go back through and say, okay, what's it like today? And it's uncomfortable, it's sobering, right? But you
Yeah.
see, oh, something, so yeah, it's about that. We could be better, but that's happening that way. But there are other steps where, oh, yeah, that doesn't work at all like we want it to. Clients are when they hear about us, they click on the contact us button and they get some cheesy form, you know, and it's like, oh, that's not the experience we really know they need. Or there are cases where they're totally blocked from moving forward. And so doing that, what it should be versus what it is today, that surfaces these 2 or 3 priorities for the business that right now we need to fix to allow our clients to get to the goodness that we offer them.
Great. Now, one thing that also came to my mind regarding the clarity also as well. And again, this is from personal experience interacting with a couple of founders. So one thing I hear from them always saying, it's like, you know, I'm feeling a little bit lost. I'm feeling stressed. I ask why. They said, like, I have a lot of things on my plate, many things going on in the company. I have to deliver, so performance. Uh, and of course we know why. So two things here. So first, they're trying to build, the company they're dreaming to build, but then they come and say, hey, like, we're feeling lost with, which is the opposite of clarity, of course, because we have pressure delivering on time to clients. We have pressure maybe if they took some investment from the investors, right? Sometimes it might be market conditions. So how founders and CEOs, they can keep themselves on track to not lose this radical clarity that you talk about here, Pete. So how I keep myself accountable
Mm.
that I'm not losing this clarity.
So the first thing is just to remind what listeners what I just said, because it starts with that. Once you know why you're here, that's very, very simple story. You make sure everybody else sees that same story and need why we're here. So it keeps everybody on the same page and the same priorities. And then you stay true to that number one over everything else. So that means when you wake up at 3 a.m. and you're anxious because of that funding round that you're trying to get, and things are out of your control, or there's too much to do. How am I going to get that done? And I know this is easy to say and harder to do, but there really is value in, at that point, stepping back and saying, okay, just let's go back to why we're, where we're at in the journey. What, it's not perfect, but is that, what about going to where, to this purpose we have for that target audience? Where does that fit in here? Yeah, that's pretty important. Well, then is there something else that's less important that I can remove? Right. So it's about that focus and that prioritization. And there's a certain amount of letting go, right? That you are where you are and who you are, and you're not Superman, and accept that there might be a setback or whatever. And you can ask yourself, am I still committed to this thing I'm doing? Yeah, I am. Well, it's gonna be a little harder than I thought, but I'm not failing. I'm just taking longer, right? It's this focus on this mission that you're on. There's another aspect to it too, Mehmet. It's something I call the mindset of meaning for CEOs, and it's especially helpful for accidental CEOs like you and me that can be so focused on how it works and the things, all the things. So three parts of this. One is authenticity.
Mm.
And that is CEOs that are successful are transparent, and they're focused on the truth, if you will, what's really happening, not trying to control and make things be something it's not. So that takes the pressure off some of this. It also that's how you unite your team, and that's how you open the door for access to your prospects, because if they believe that you're being true to them, right? If what they hear about you is accurate, and if what you promise them is what you will do, that authenticity goes so far. Back to what we said about this crazy, noisy world we live in.
Yeah.
personally, so much of what I read and see, I wonder if it's a machine talking to me anymore. I think mostly it is, right? AI. And authenticity says, if you can find a way to break through and be human with people, your team and your prospects, that stands out in a way that no matter how sophisticated your other communications are, it stands out farther. So authenticity is the first. In being intentional is the second. And that's that less is more idea, that do what's important first. And if you don't have time for the thing that's secondly important, you'll do it later, right? And accept that 3 a.m. thing, accept what you can actually do that's important and that you're doing the important thing. And the third one we already mentioned is generosity.
Yes, or empathy.
Wrap that whole thing in, we're doing this to make these bullseye customers' lives better in some way. That's why we're here. It just helps everybody cope with adversity a lot better.
One thing on that, Pete, like, do they need, or like, of course they need to, but I mean, make it part of the company culture and part of, maybe every communication within the company, because usually what happens, and I've seen it with experienced CEOs, and I've seen it with like new, or as you call them, occasional CEOs, is the fact that because they have a lot of things going on, maybe they have some clarity, but they miss on, what we call it, the company culture, right? So
Mhm.
so having this culture of openness, transparency, and then they end up later on being kind of micromanaging, the team. um so how they can avoid reaching this point? I mean, how do they plant the seeds of all the, the points that you just mentioned, to make sure that, of course, because they're gonna scale, and as a CEO, they will not be free to go and deliver this message for every single member on the team, especially maybe once they cross 20, 50. I don't know what's the magic
Yep.
number here. So how we make sure that this culture stays as they scale within the company?
Totally agree that there's a certain number, whether it's 20 or 50, where um, the way you manage the team before, when you were smaller, breaks, no longer works. And the
Hmm.
reason why, in my opinion, is that the source of that is when you start out and it's you and your small team of 5 people that are with you together, and you're in the trenches. You think about it. First of all 5 of you had something, you had something in common that you saw, and you still feel that every day, right? You're working together on this same stuff, and you're all in the customer meetings pretty much. So, the prospect meetings, and you're all dealing with the product challenges or the launches. So you've just got this natural bond. But as you grow, you start to specialize. You start, smaller and smaller percent of the people in the business are actually directly involved with selling a product or operating, or building the product. And so without that common experience, people just naturally go different directions, and they have a different perception of what's important. That's the culture can help glue that together. So if you, as the CEO, if you do what I said before, and you're the steward of the truth, right? The true story. If you keep that at the center, that grows into your culture. That becomes your true story. People talk about product market fit, they talk about brand, they talk about culture. I believe if you're doing this well, all of those are very much overlapped and part of
Mm.
the same thing. And they all have to, at their center, this purpose, this true story, this reason we're here, and who we're helping. I use a term, it doesn't sound very good, but I just love the thought behind it. It's called zero culture.
Mm.
And what I mean by that is, back to simplicity. clarity, rather than adding a culture for your business. What you do is you take things away from that culture that is there, the core that really works, that is getting in the way. So remember, we said your business is essentially these two poles. It's what we do that gives value to this target market. So that attraction. Zero culture says everything that is in the way of that value going to the client. It's a natural pull. It's because we have this thing that's inherently valuable for them, and they have this need that will just draws that to them. And the only reason they're not getting it is because we're not, and we're in the way. So I like to say, find your truth and get out of the way. And if you have that at the core of your business, not just your product development, but how you do your meetings, how you relate to each other, how you treat each other, the values that you put, you raise up as important for your business. If they are all about getting out of the way of the value, that's what I mean by zero culture. It's kind of like you let the laws of business physics happen, right? It's like gravity or magnetism of value. And if it's there, it's always there. And the reason the reason that's not working isn't that you didn't do things. It's more that you are doing things that are in the way. It's a different way to think about it.
It's like overcomplicating things, right?
Overcomplicating. Yep. Or it being inconsistent. That's the other thing. You have one side of the business doing one thing and another side of the business doing something that is confusing because it's not the same way we talk about it, or it's not the same way we do it. And that really confuses clients and prospects.
You mentioned it like a couple of moments ago, and I know it like you have it kind of and we just talked about now, but uh, you have this term, or you call it a mantra: simplify to grow. Um, Now, again, back to these occasional founders, right, who became CEOs, how they can learn how to do this, because you mentioned something also, I believe it's fundamental, uh, in the introduction, about the conception we have from society, what we have been taught. We are given playbooks, and people know I have like this sensitivity towards playbooks and fixed things. So I, I need to leave everything behind and start thinking in a different way. Now, how I can also, part of the journey when I want to start to simplify things to grow, make sure that I still kind of showing this flexibility, because I know, and I've seen it also. Maybe you can share some of your experience, Pete. You have a lot of experts coming in, maybe they are mentors, and they will be telling the CEO multiple things at the same time, and again they lose the clarity, because someone, they will say, hey, like, I have done this for 25 years, we have done it all the time this way, this is what you should be doing next. Maybe on the sales side, someone will come and say, no, like, you are into the SaaS business, and the SaaS business playbook should be done this way. And we are talking only about sales and marketing. And there's a bunch of other functions that the CEO, maybe at the beginning, they need to be involved in. So how I can do this filtration so I can simplify, think, and grow?
I love that question, Mehmet. And the way I see it is, if you're an accidental CEO, you're an expert at what you do, technology, product, policy, this thing you do, you're good at that, right?
Right.
You can succeed as a CEO, not by giving up your expertise, but by using it to help you navigate all these incompetencies, all these things you don't know how to do that you really have to be able to do. So the way to do it is not to try to be an expert on things you're not an expert on, but rather use your core expertise and this true story, this mission you're on, as your compass for all of these decisions. So I'll give you an example of what I mean by that. Let's say that, well, first of all, so what that means is you need to add to your technical expertise customer expertise. So if you're going to invest in anything, expand your understanding of what you make to who you make it for and what's their need, what's their experience, what works, what doesn't. So the more you know about that who, because you know the why, the more you know about the who, the better you're going to be able to navigate all these things. Because what happens, let's say you have a financial situation where you need to, organize the company financially in some way, and you bring in an expert because you're not a financial expert, and then, investor, corporate investment executive. And they start explaining to you, well, you need to do this or that. In my experience, this is the right way to do it. They have all these recommendations. Your job isn't to understand their expertise in that situation. Your job is to represent your mission, which is your strength. I know what we make and options for how we can deliver it. And I know what the end result is. I know what that client, that prospect, that customer needs or wants, or what we believe we can give them. So then you just ask, now you're curious with that expert, whatever field it is, you're curious, and you say, explain to me how that will work. Here's how we need this to play out for my investors or whatever might be your audience. What are my options then, right? So test everything you hear from these experts against that foundation of your expertise and your mission for your clients. It's scary not to be an expert on all these things because you're used to being the expert, but that's your future as a CEO. You're never going to know everything. What I encourage you to do is just double down on being the expert on that thing you do and who you do it for.
How much this intersect with the famous saying of do things that don't scale?
Tell me more what you mean by that.
Yeah, so there is a, it's from Paul Graham of Y Combinator. Like he said, like you should be doing the things that don't scale, meaning that at the beginning you need to get involved and learn all the things that usually you would not be able to maybe hire because you don't have enough money.
Yeah.
You need to learn all these things. So how much that intersect? Because it's a very famous word in the startup world also as well.
Well, I think, of course, you need to, there's that certain level of understanding you need. I believe that you need to do things that don't scale, but you don't want to be the expert at things that don't scale,
Mm-hmm.
if that makes sense. So yes, yeah, you need to dive into it enough to know how that thing affects what you're doing. It's almost like an API, a personal API, right? You need to be able to totally interface with this thing, this competence, this function in your business, so that it is providing everything that your customers need and your product needs. But you don't need to know how it works on the other end. You can't afford to, right? And yes, when there's no money, you do what you have to do, but you're not going to be an expert on those things. You just do enough, right? You just do enough to get by.
Right. Now you mentioned about AI and authenticity. You tied both together. And I know like you say the most human wins. How this can be seen in a world where you talked about noise and you maybe saw my eyes like were like this because I always, in all my discussions, even when I write my thoughts, sometimes I always repeat like we are living in a noisy world. It's again, we've been living in a noisy world for a long time. I would say since maybe we start to have radios and televisions, probably. Um, how I can be, as again, an accidental founder, making sure that I keep the human touch there despite this noise. Because you know what happens, Pete, and I've seen it beforehand on different people, me included. I don't exclude myself. I'm not saying a special person. I'm a human also. So when we see people doing certain things, and maybe using AI is one of them, or maybe we see people leveraging a specific, I would call it robotic way of doing things, communicating with their customers. It it might have worked with one, two cases, and then you find this guy or someone who comes up and say, "Hey, like this is the only thing you need to do this," and they give you these messaging, and they give you, what you have to write, how you have to say it, and then after a while, you start to see them acting like robots.
Yep.
Now, how I can, as a accidental CEO, avoid this trap and make sure that I am able to distinguish between, yeah, the thing that I really need to do. Maybe I need to change the tone I speak with people, because I come from a technical background. I'm a little bit kind of rude guy, and now I need like to show this empathy. I understand that maybe we need to do a few changes, but how I avoid looking like I'm an AI or looking like a robot?
What a great topic. This, Mehmet, as you said, that we're all facing this now. We all see it in our daily lives, the effects of inauthentic communications coming from AI, right? Or influenced by AI. And so that I'm being a robot with AI's help, right? Um, and it's so tempting, because back to what we said about doing less, less is more. What society, what business, what all of our examples say is AI allows me to do things 10 times bigger, or do 10 times more things, or 10 times easier, or 100 times, right? And so it looks free, and it looks not only free, it looks like, well, I have to uh send AI emails because I can send 10 times as many. Why wouldn't I do that? And the reason why that won't work is every one of your competitors, every one of us has that option now. So, Mehmet, you think it's noisy now? Wait till next year or the year after, because it's only right. It's going to get worse. And I think that whole strategy, that whole marketing model is broken because of AI. And companies that succeed are going to be the ones that wrestle with this hard thing of, how can I be human? How can I show up as a authentic human to my clients and prospects and employees? How do I do that at scale?
Right.
Because it's one thing. You and I were talking real time, face to face. This is it. This is the good stuff, right? We're sharing ideas. Well, that doesn't scale. I can't talk to every one of my clients this way. Um, but if I turn it over to AI, I am going to have less and less impact that way. And I might even turn people away, because I know personally, I have a bias against communications that I believe are coming from a robot. And Mehmet, there's very few cases where they can prove to me that they're not a robot anymore. So the solution, I don't have an easy answer for you. I can't say, oh, we'll do this recipe, that recipe,
Yeah,
this
we
thing.
are against that.
Right. But the good news about that, the positive is, because it's so hard, if you take it on as a CEO and you say, we're going to wrestle with this as a company, and we're going to work on how we can come up with creative, innovative ways to show up authentically in our market. As this world changes every year, we're going to have to keep working on that. But if you invest in that, you won't do it perfectly, but if you're if you've made progress, if you found some processes or some tools or some ideas in your company or culture or values, things that help you do that better, compared to others, you'll stand out because the vast majority of businesses are going to fall into the temptation of the easy button, and it's going to be just a bunch of garbage, and we're all going to lose interest in that. Oh, we'll probably ask AI. We already are asking AI to sort through that for us, right?
Yeah, it's funny. I don't know where I got this thought from. But it was triggered by two things. So it was triggered by me receiving these messages you're talking about, and it was triggered by someone which I don't know really who posted on LinkedIn, kind of complaining, right? And then I, just reflected for a moment, and I said, okay, hold on one second. What is AI, right? So AI is just a piece of software, and it's like instruction that we give to a machine to act in a way that we want it to do. And then I figured out, to your point, like, of course, AI amplified this in a scary way, but I believe the noise, this is my own opinion, of course, the noise was there, and all the stuff that I don't like, which is exactly what you were mentioning, Pete, was there before. I can give you an example. Maybe I know some of my friends even will be pissed off from me, but I can give, from a simple vertical I was kind of involved in at some stage. Cybersecurity, right? You see the messaging in cybersecurity. Oh, if you don't buy us, you will be hit by viruses, ransomware, whatever. And you see every single vendor started to copy the same message. You talk to salespeople, they talk the same language. And when I stepped out from being a guy working for a company, I become kind of the independent guy. This is where customers start to open up with me. Of course, like, because I don't wear any hat anymore. It's me as Mehmet. And they start to tell me, hey, you know what, man, like everything comes to us with the same messaging. We are bored of that. We don't want to hear the same, it's like the old tape that is keep, repeating again and again. I don't want to hear that. I need to hear something new. If you're not here with some new messaging, that doesn't work. And I think this is resonating now with people. The other thing which I said is we trained AI with what we used to do, which, it's not authentic. It's built on like, fixated playbooks, I call them, that might work, might not work. And then you go and tell the AI, hey, like, give me a cold email template for this business. And oh, yeah, like, see, it understand our business. I said, guys, so what? Because the thing that and it's coming to the thing that you mentioned, Pete, and this is why I like also the discussion about this two poles you mentioned
Yeah.
about like your purpose and the empathy, generosity, all the other things you mentioned. And this is why I tell people, like, if you don't have this, I call it empathy, authenticity, and the purpose, so you're gonna lose a lot because customer will feel it, they will smell it
Mhm.
far away. And by the way, you don't have even sometimes to use AI. You can feel that they memorize the script and they
Yep.
are just trying to say the script. And
Yep.
I yeah, and AI is just, what is AI? Like, we train AI on our own data, right? So
Yes.
us as the humans, we just go and blame AI. And this is what I wrote yesterday on my LinkedIn post. I said, before like complaining about AI, I think we should go and fix ourselves before we fix AI. Because if we fix ourselves, AI become much more fixable because AI is just trying to mimic, what we do. So this is just my 2 cents on this. But indeed, Pete, like it's something very important. To be authentic and try to show this empathy, generosity, as you call it. Try to show that you really care about your customers, partners, employees also as well,
Yep.
and lead with example. Now, um, when you start to work with these founders, like, is there an assessment you do with them, Pete, or is it like you assume that you know just they are occasional founders, they just started it, and it's like a same, not the same thing, but I mean, it's the process get repeated almost all the time, or is it like something you customize when you work with your own clients?
It's very custom. As we talked about, the accidental CEOs have some things in common, but the needs they have and their strengths and opportunities are different. And I like to start with something that's actually available on the page that I'm going to share with your listeners at the end here. It's called the Accidental CEO Audit, and it's an online questionnaire. It's like 15 questions. It's not very long, but it gives, and then I create a report that looks at their relative strengths and weaknesses on 5 key vectors of being a CEO. So rather than things like financial acumen or like we said, rather than the functional stuff, what are the almost the outcomes of what a CEO is about? And the 5 are, see if I can remember them off the top of my head: strategy, leadership, growth, culture, and alignment. So these are things that if they're successful with their company, they'll see these things happening in their business. So how are they at being able to deliver on those 5? So we start with that as a sense to say, where's the biggest, impediment for their growth? And then it often, as I said, it gets into the idea of uncovering that true story for their business and for them.
I can imagine the ROI is, in double digits, if not 3 digits.
Yeah,
When
it's really, and just I'll mention in the book, I share 3 stories of businesses I worked with that the transformation of their businesses was really something to see. And those are some examples of it is fun to see that light bulb go off and see their trajectory change.
out of curiosity, and again, it's something that popped up in my head just now. Have you seen maybe what in within your client base, or maybe you have seen it some, with someone else, where because of defining, their why, they change something radically in their business, maybe the business model, maybe the personas of the customers they try to target. Have you seen something radical like this?
It's interesting you asked that, because what I found is almost without fail, I can't think of an example where this wasn't true. We never have a situation where there's a problem with their why. So
Mm,
there's a truth there. There's a strong truth about their business that was there all along, and we needed to uncover it and make it visible to them and understandable to them. So there hasn't been a need to reinvent the business very much. It's
mm,
more what I said before about they're doing all these things that aren't helping with that thing that they needed, that they really are about. So an example would be one client had a big transformational experience, but it was mostly about they had this really powerful SaaS platform, and it could do so much that they kept being tempted by all these different opportunities that were not in this very sharply defined segment of the market. And we were able to together agree, you know what? I know those other industries and those other markets are attractive to you and are tempting, but this one tiny little sliver of the market is a $350 million opportunity for your business. Let's just focus on that and say
yeah.
no to all the rest. And we rewrote their website and their story about their product to be just for this one application, and that made all the difference in the world. It's the same product, really, but it now is just clear to everybody exactly who it's for, and it opens up the door for that market in a way they
Del-
couldn't before.
delivering the right messaging of the value proposition without
Yeah.
maybe changing the product itself.
And but to be fair, by doing that, imagine you're on the product team and you're getting called into these different sales calls with different industries. But then that changes and we say, you know what? We're just about this one market, and all the prospect meetings are just about that. Don't you think your ability to create um, um, new features and improve the product gets better? It absolutely does. So the product got better too once that decision was made, because it was clear exactly what it was for.
Yeah, and I believe, and I'm sure you've seen it, Pete, like once I master one specific market segment, it will be much easier later to copy that, or let's say replicate that to other maybe markets, to other use cases, because you master it, and then now you learned also how to tweak the
Yeah,
messaging, how to tweak maybe even the which features you should bring in front, like which personas you should be speaking with. So that's make a lot of sense.
I agree.
Yeah, 100%. Pete, like really, I'm enjoying the discussion with you today, and you shed light on many important aspects of the journey of these founders. Now, the traditional question I asked towards the end of my episodes: where people can get in touch, how they can start with you, and I think the book is available. Tell us like where we can find more and get in touch with you.
Mehmet, I made it easier for your listeners. I've created a page for anybody that's listening to this episode that will give them some goodies that they can learn more. It's going to be at my website at b2b-clarity.com/CTO. And if they go there, then, and if you don't mind putting that in the show notes, that would be
Of
awesome.
course.
And there they can buy the book. They can get some frameworks from the book that I'll have worksheets there that they can download. And if they want to reach out and have a chat with me, they can do that from there as well. All free. I guess the book, you gotta you go to Amazon for the book, but
Yeah, sure. I really appreciate that this generosity also from you, Pete. Thank you very much, and thank you, for the time. I know how things can get busy, especially at start of the day for you, almost beginning of the week. And I'm transparent with the audience. We're recording on Tuesday, 7th of October, so probably you're watching this 2 weeks after today. Um, and yeah, so the link that you mentioned, Pete, it will be available in the show notes. Any podcasting app you're using, you will find them there. If you're watching on YouTube, you will find them in the description. And again, I can't thank you enough, Pete, for all the insights you gave us today. And this is for the audience. This is how I end my episodes. If you just discovered this podcast by luck or by chance, thank you for passing by. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did so, give me a small favor, just subscribe and share it with a couple of people, just your inner circle. We're trying to make an impact. We're trying to reach people to get benefit of all, the guests I had on the show, including Pete, who might inspire you, who might help you if you're feeling lost, you need some clarity. So, like for example, you can get to Pete. And if you are one of the people who keeps coming again and again, thank you very much for the support. Thank you for loyalty. Thank you for all what you're doing for the show. I know like it's kind of a cliche now, I repeat at the end of each episode, but without two factors, first, of course, the audience, and of course, all my guests, the CTO show could not in 2025 never lose 1 week a position somewhere in the world on the top 200 Apple Podcast chart. This is something, I've been doing this for almost 3 years, but this year was really different, and you're not failing me, guys. So thank you for all the support, and thank you for also supporting the launch of my book, From Nowhere to Next. And if you want to grab your copy, it's also available on Amazon. You'll find the link on the CTO Show website, which is mehmetcto.show. And again, thank you very much for tuning in. We'll meet again very soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hit that subscribe button, share the show with your tech-savvy friends and fellow entrepreneurs, and leave us a review on your favorite podcast app. Your support means the world to us.